first person who comes to mind when I say Formula One driver? Maybe Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, or maybe one of the all-time greats, Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna? I hope, however, that it doesn't come as a surprise if I tell you that other people have driven in the sport as well. Probably for the best, could get a bit boring otherwise. And come to think of it actually, how many drivers have we had in the history of the sport? We've got 20 now, and we get about 3 new ones each year. Times 75 years of the championship makes 204.
784.
That's a lot of dudes! 2 of them were women. But as a turn of phrase, I think it's appropriate. And that's just the people who started a race. If we include all the people who attempted to start a race by entering the weekend, we actually get 869. Nice. This got me thinking. With hundreds and hundreds of people who've been involved with the sport over the years, what does the average Formula One career actually look like? It's easy just to focus on the people at the very top of the sport, but not everyone can win race after race and take home multiple titles. There's just not enough to go around. How many races, points, podiums and wins does the average driver in Formula One actually have? And if we work all of that out, can we find the most medium driver of all time? My name is Mr. V, and I like to spend my free time creating Excel spreadsheets. Let me show you what my latest one says. Wait, that's not the right spreadsheet. But I guess this is a good time to let you know that last month the channel hit 50,000 subscribers. And so to celebrate this milestone, I have created this limited edition bucket hat. As there's 50,000 of you, I've made 50 of these. There's still a few left. If you like the look of it, check out the link in the description to see this and several other sweet pieces of racing merch too. Alright, okay, back to the video. Considering Formula One has changed a lot through its history, the old seasons were weird, I thought we should look at the average driver over the entire 75 years of the sport, but also look at just the last 30 years to get an idea of the average driver now. To make sure we're accurately calculating Mr. Mid, we need to look at as many categories as possible. So I'm obviously throwing in things like number of races, wins, fastest laps, etc. But I'm also throwing in some more unusual statistics. Which driver has the highest rate of lap 1 DNFs? That sort of thing. Once we've looked at all our categories, we can see who ranks the most consistently average across all of them, and then crown the epitome of Formula One, the Grand Prix driver. Let's start this off simple. Number of seasons. Average since 1950? 3. Average since 1994? 4.5. Okay, so it's not just a huge list of drivers with only one season. The average person does get a few years to prove themselves, that's nice. Slightly less simple is number of races. The reason this is not so simple, as I alluded to before, is because a race entry and a race start are not the same thing. Just briefly, an entry is when you turn up at the start of the weekend and say, I would like to race please, but a start is when you actually line up on the grid and take part in a formation lap. Well, nowadays. Anyway, back in the day, you could get in the car halfway through the race and that still counted, not getting into it. From our current grid, Yuki Tsunoda actually has the highest percentage of missed starts with 3 out of his 87 entries. 1 for a brake failure and 2 for engine failures, all on the way to the grid. It's just bad luck, basically. Lewis Hamilton has the joint second most entries of all time and he started every single one of them. Most entries ever at time of recording, 401 for Fernando Alonso. Least, well, 1 for loads of people. Median number of entries, 8 since 1950 and 46.5 since 1994. The number of starts are obviously a little bit lower. The record is once again Fernando Alonso, but this time he has 398, as he has 3 career DNSs, 2 gearbox failures, and 1 US Grand Prix tyre debacle. Average starts since 1950? 7. Average starts since 1994? 44 in 4.5 seasons. Formula 1 did always love a mid-season change. On to pole positions, and at this point I should mention that all of these categories the average is the median, not the mean. If we did use that, then every single category would have an average of 1.43, which is 1,122 races shared equally between 784 drivers. Obviously, some people have more than 1 pole position, but I was curious to see if the distribution meant the average driver had at least 1. No. Not even close. Throughout the entire history of the sport, and even just in the last 30 years, the average driver will finish their career with 0 pole positions, 0 fastest laps, 0 wins, and even though there's more to go around, 0 podiums and 0 laps led. But can they actually score some points? Average career points since 1950 is 0, but in the last 30 years that goes up to 8.75. That is right. In their entire career, the average Formula 1 driver will get the equivalent of one 6th place finish. That's it. I should add that I did not convert people's points into the modern system. It would take an insanely long time to do, particularly with the races where people used to share cars and new rules for half points races, that kind of thing. And also, it just doesn't change that much. By my estimation, the average since 1950 might go up to 1, maybe, and the average since 1994 goes up to about 15. But realistically, we have enough categories. It doesn't really matter. Important to note that our average driver in the last 30 years did not score their whopping 8.75 points all at once. They did it across an average of 4.5 career points finishes, which means they scored points in about 10% of all their races. At this point, we can start to add in some more niche categories to make this thing more accurate. How about number of races until first points finish? Since 1950, Mr. Mid has no points finishes, and so this is NA. But we can still rank people in order, and then everyone with NA gets the middle of the NA rank, i.e. 568th. In the last 30 years, Mr. Mid does have points, and so we can work out that the average time to get there is 12 races. Proportion of races classified next, where the lowest is 0, as some people never finished a race in their career, and obviously the highest is 100%, as 167? What do you mean? Who is that? Bob Scott? I swear to God, if this is some weird Indy 500 statistic, I am gonna lose my... Bob Scott was an American driver who participated in the 3 runnings of the Indy 500, 1952, 53, and 54. Therefore, 3 career starts. Okay, normal enough. He never actually made it to the end of the race, twice retiring quite early on, but those are still counted as classifications at Indy, even to this day. Because he retired early, he was able to act as a relief driver for others who couldn't finish their race. And so, with 3 career starts, he drove 5 cars, with 5 classified finishes, 167% career classified percentage. I hate the Indy 500 so much! Averages for this are a bit more normal, with 58% in the entire history of the sport and 68.5% since 1994, which is honestly kinda low. That means the average driver DNFs over 30% of all the races they're in. Yeah, I was kind of shocked by that one too. And just before I get loads of comments saying this is dragged down by all these people with only 1 start, I present to you Andrea De Cesaris. He had 208 starts in his career and DNF'd 65% of them. Yeah, 136 DNFs. Along with the classification record, we can also look at a driver's lap 1 retirement record as a percentage of their total races. Obviously, the lowest here is 0, and the highest is 100%. Lads. These are all people with only 1 start. No idea why they didn't get a second one. But my personal highlight from the people with multiple starts is Michael Andretti. You know, the guy trying to get an 11th team into Formula 1. He drove 13 races in Formula 1 and in that time retired on lap 1 3 times, 23%. And he almost had more with 2 lap 4 retirements. Michael, no heroics into Sandoval, please. Anyway, average lap 1 retirement rate in the entire history of the sport is actually 0%, but that goes up to 3% in the last 30 years. We can also look at every driver's average grid position to see who has the most average qualifier. The best here is obviously Fangio with a P1.78 average, but for me, the most impressive is Senna in 3rd place with P3.15, as he did this in the 80s and 90s when Formula 1 was a lot more consistent. Worst career average qualifier? Well, there's a few people who just started 1 Indy 500 all the way back in P33 or P34. But if you look at all the people with 5 or more races, we get Alan Berg. Through his 9 starts in the 1986 season, he had an average grid slot of P26. Average since 1950, P17. Average in the last 30 years is only up to P16.3. This is skewed because people at the back of the grid typically have much shorter careers, you know, a handful of P19s before getting fired or running out of money, getting kicked out and being replaced by someone else who just has a handful of P19s. There is a strong and Not entirely surprising, correlation between average quali position and career length, which makes just a beautiful graph. And for our final category, we can look at the average age that drivers started their very first Formula 1 race. When I think back to early F1, I think of loads of middle-aged guys on the grid. But actually, the average career started at 28 years old. Obviously, it's older than today, but surprisingly young in a way. In the last 30 years, that has come down a lot to 24 years of age. But even so, that is nothing compared to nowadays, as the average in the last 10 years is just 20 years old. And with that, we have our career stats for the theoretical most average driver in history. So now it's just time to see who fits the bill. As with the most average track video, I looked at every driver's average rank across all of these categories to see who was closest to the middle. Since 1950, as we've had 784 drivers, we need to find the person with the average rank closest to 392.5. 392.5th? Just put it on the screen. No one landed bang on, but we do have a winner with an average rank of 391.9. Jimmy Rees. Now, I have to admit, I spent a lot of time looking at Formula 1 history, but I have never heard of Jimmy Rees. I have a sneaking suspicion where in Formula 1 history he might have come from. Editor Mr. V, please can you put a list of all his races up on the screen behind me? I have a feeling he might be from the Indy 500. Starting his F1 career, 22 years of age, and with 6 starts, 0 pole positions, 0 podiums, 0 wins, and 0 career points, but an average grid position of 12.5, which is actually really good for the Indy 500. Jimmy Rees is the Formula 1 driver. But I wasn't entirely satisfied with that, particularly because he never took part in a regular Formula 1 race. I decided I would kick out all of the people who only drove in the Indy 500 and take another look. This did affect the averages a bit. Average starts and entries went up, and the average grid position got closer to P1. The average classify percentage actually went down, but as I said, if you qualify for the Indy 500, it is literally impossible not to be classified. Our average age for the first race has stayed the same, and the average driver still has 0 podiums, 0 wins, 0 pole positions, and crucially, 0 career points. But the numbers are swapped around enough to give us some new faces to look at. With 682 remaining drivers, we are now looking for an average rank of 341.5. So I took the closest driver along with 5 either side. Just like in my most average track video, we need to make sure we're not picking someone who's flip-flopped between rank 1 and rank 682. So we can also add in every driver's variance to see who's the most consistently average. Lower variance is better, and so I think our ultimate driver has to be one of these 3. Johnny Cecotto, Gabriele Tarquini, or Emanuele Pirro. But hang on, as well as Formula 1, Cecotto was also a damn successful motorbike driver, and I wouldn't really call it average to get to the top of both cars and bikes in your career. And then Pirro has 5 overall wins at the Le Mans 24 Hours, with 6 class wins, and he stood on the podium 9 times in a row. I wouldn't call that average either. So what about Tarquini? What has he been up to? Well, actually, Gabriele Tarquini does hold a record in Formula 1. For the most did not pre-qualify classifications. Therefore, the most races entered and not started. 40. Gabriele, jeez. You know what? That is exactly the kind of silliness that we are looking for in the most average Formula 1 driver. Congratulations, Gabriele Tarquini, you are him. While Tarquini did race after 1994, his career stats don't exactly line up with the modern most average driver. And so we need to do the same thing again. Look at the most average driver with the lowest variance in the last 30 years. With 172 drivers remaining, we are now looking for rank 86.5. And while we have a couple people exactly on that mark, it is clear to see that our most consistently mid driver out there is this guy. But who can it be? Who represents the very essence of the modern Formula 1 driver? It is, of course, Marcus Ericsson. Yes, from his 97 career starts, Marcus Ericsson scored 18 career points from 11 points finishes, 11% of all his races. An average grid of 16.8, 1 lap run retirement, 0 poles, 0 podiums, and 0 wins. He joined the sport at 23 years of age and truly did lead the most average Formula One life. Congratulations, Marcus! From this day forward, every career will be judged against yours, the true essence of what it means to be a Formula One racer. Behold, driver.
I drive.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you a little bit more perspective on this weird and wonderful sport. And maybe next time, before you call a driver washed, just ask yourself, what would Marcus Ericsson do? No, wait, no, that's not the right lesson at all.